Welcome. My name is Natasha Sherman, and I am your host. And my guest today is Lynne Azarchi, and she is the Executive Director of Kidsbridge Tolerance Center and the author of The Empathy Advantage, coaching kids to be kind, respectful, and successful. Welcome, Lynne.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're quite welcome. So I want to start out with the Kidsbridge Tolerance Center. What exactly is it, a location, and what is the mission, and what do you do there, and who gets to do it?
So we are physically located in Ewing, and we started out with a tolerance center, and then the program changed to be mobile outreach programs. We went into the classrooms, and then, as you know, COVID struck, and we had to go where the kids were. So very quickly we pivoted, and all of our programs were online. So we're a combination of all these programs. Hopefully in the fall we're back to going into the classrooms. If not, we can hybrid, remote, and then in person.
Yeah. And so how do, clearly again, let's just go back to what's the mission? What is it you're trying to do through Kidsbridge Tolerance Center?
So that's the best question of all. Our mission is diversity appreciation, bullying prevention, and to teach social emotional skills. The world has changed very quickly because of George Floyd, so whereas we used to refer to what we teach as diversity appreciation, it is transformed into anti-bias and anti-racism. So the foundation of what we're trying to teach children as young as preschool is kindness, respect. Can't we all be friends? How do we talk to one another? And it's really important, research says, to start earlier so that as we progress as a society, kids are growing up to be kinder and more respectful.
And I think the kids, have their unique talents, and little ones, and they solve their problems quickly. I hate you, and then I love you, and it's a natural kind of an instinct, but because of media and global village kind of a thing, I think they learn bias very early. And in your book, you talk about the fact that empathy can be taught, and not only can it be taught, it should be taught. I want to get to that, but I want to ask you, so how does a parent who is interested in bringing this into their school, how do they do that? Because this can now be done globally.
So just to back up to your very insightful point, bias and bullying starts at 3 years old. So the point for parents and teachers is never too young to start. In terms of Kidsbridge programs, there are many other national programs that people can look at as well. And I think one of the points I make is that teachers and parents need to be, we call them upstanders, people who stand up and speak out. If your child, your school, your class does not have these programs, social emotional programs, you need to open your voice. Maybe a couple of parents get together and say, we need social emotional skills. Very important for anyone listening to know is that social emotional skills are really the foundation upon which you can build academic enrichment and success. So
define social emotional skills.
So social emotional skills, some people, we used to call them life skills. So now we call them social emotional skills. And that's what I fell in love with, and that's why I wrote the book. I felt that empathy was the most important social emotional skill in terms of character education. That's where you should start. And I'm going to scaffold it for you quickly. The first step is empathy for yourself, self-compassion, mindfulness, which I know you believe in, and on top of that, empathy for others. How can we advance as a society or kids in a classroom if we don't care for other people? And then the final step is action, that if I have empathy for Natasha, but I don't help her, it's not enough. I need to act on behalf of you or the child who is being bullied or the child who is being teased.
Yeah. So the question that has surfaced for me, social media is not going anywhere. And, you mentioned in and I heard of this title, and I may actually have the book but never read it, but the title alone says it, Alone Together. So we think we're together, but we're really alone together. and we're isolated from each other. And I'm not even sure the upcoming generation is really interested in empathy. When you see someone drowning and you video it and don't get help, there is such a monstrous disconnect that it begs the question, do people actually care about empathy or shifting this?
So that's a very insightful question, because research is somewhat alarming. Narcissism is rising for our kids. Empathy is declining. And so we call it active listening, where we're having a conversation today. I'm looking at you face to face. These are the skills that kids are losing. You'll look at kids on a bench and they're all on their phones and not looking at each other. So I really implore parents and teachers to, yes, social media is here, and yes, technology is here, but we need a moderation and a balance in all things. So as a parent or teacher listening, in moderation in all things, and try to rebuild those skills from an early age. You know, a lot of media is used as babysitters for very young kids. It's not good for a developing brain. So face-to-face, active listening, you posture as if you're listening, and to put the phone down at times. You know, for parents, meal times, put the phone down. In classrooms, yes, use media, but in balance and consideration. I hear from teachers, kids are not able to have conversations anymore. We have a lot of work to do.
Wow. Wow.
Sobering, yeah.
It's actually quite terrifying for me.
That's why I wrote this book, because I'm you know, I don't want to be alarming, but I think
one should be alarming, because, you know, if you are disconnected from another human being to the point where you actually can't feel anything for their feelings, you can't relate to them, you can watch them in distress and take a picture instead of help, then you know, we're kind of sinking to the level of animal kingdom.
Thank you. Yeah, it is very alarming, and I try not to be an alarmist, but I wanted to reach out in a way to, we can turn it around. We can turn around with this simply, like 20 minutes a day, 20 minutes a week, empathy exercises. I mean, you can listen to your child. You can, there's also nature deficit disorder. Go for a walk, you know, with the trees, with nature. Try to think of other activities where you are face-to-face and listening, because you're building your children's skills. And another thing about with a strong empathy, you're building your child's life skills for success. They become better team members, better listeners. In college, people gravitate to them. So actually...
and more successful.
So that's the point. If more empathy and activity to help others, you become a prized classmate, a prized college, and then prized in the business world. So
I think that's one of the key points, because I think on some level, most of us are pretty resigned. You know, it is the way it is, we can't change it, and everybody's doing it, so we aren't alarmed enough. And it's kind of, you have to get to, well, what's in it for me to make it important enough that I will get interested and become active. And I think it's through our children. If we want our children, and I think that's, you have to get to the parents to get to the children. If you want your children to be successful, if you want them to be happy, and most of us do, and we're not all that skilled in a lot of areas, but particularly in the area of technology, that we have allowed this to happen. And I even talk to couples who, you know, one of their major complaints is, oh yeah, my husband sits there with his phone, or my wife is, you know, and again, well, that's kind of the way it is.
But they're modeling. These are adults who are modeling.
Absolutely.
Disrespect to people around them, disrespect to their children. That I saw, I'll tell you a story. I went into a pizza parlor and I saw a very busy father who before COVID traveled around the world, never home, and he was having lunch with his son. They were both on their phones. I mean, it's, I was aghast. This was a father-son lunch and they were both on their phones. So but you can do it. You can do it
and
earlier.
I think you have to, again, create a sense of urgency And it's looking to the future. Do you want your kids to be happy? Do you want them to thrive? Do you want them to feel like they're contributing in some way to the world? Do you want them to feel, this sense of satisfaction of the way they're living their life? Because if you ask most people, they're not satisfied, and then we're not taking the steps to connect in ways that we could have a better experience of our lives. So I want to ask you more questions. And again, this is going to be sound bites because the book has a gajillion things in it. And the thing is, okay, so you suggest books on mindfulness. So how does that relate?
So what I said before in terms of empathy, and I know you're a mindful person, to start with yourself. You cannot care for other people and act on their behalf until you focus on yourself. So Kristen Neff is a person who actually is coming up with a brand new book on self-compassion, is someone to look at, someone who has workbooks for kids. And so when you start...
workbooks for kids, that's great.
Yeah, for teenagers for sure. So I recommend her, and there's really hundreds of books out on mindfulness.
Yeah, and again, you want to see the value in it. So...
Right, so you build on yourself, and you mentioned this before, I want to come back to that, strengths. I have middle schoolers who come into the Tolerance Center and have never had the discussion of discussing their own strengths. Wow. That's terrible. So if you can start and get the kids used to an early age, toddler, help them set the table. Have kids feel good about simple little tasks, that they are a team member and part of your home, strengths, mindfulness.
That they're contributors and
Right.
they have a sense of being a contributor.
Another thing that plagues us as adults, I have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. Try to stress and share that concept that they can develop self-empathy or self-compassion for themselves.
Just as an aside, I switch that around. Everybody's perfect. It's just there are things for us to learn in order to live a fulfilled and evolved life.
Okay.
Because, the nobody's perfect, I actually hate that phrase because, okay, if nobody's perfect, then we're looking for an unreachable goal. Let's define perfect.
Good point.
What's
Good
perfect?
point. Right.
And everybody's got a different version of it. So we set the standard that nobody reaches, and it leaves us feeling diminished and we haven't succeeded. Whereas you're perfectly human, you're a perfect human being, your body works, and you're here to learn and have fun and play in life.
And to that point in our curricula and pedagogy, you are unique. You are the best Natasha you can be.
Exactly.
You're the best Tyrone you can be. You're unique. And to take stock of, I'm a special person, what unique
Your
contribution,
strengths. Yes.
what your strengths are, what contributions can you make in your classroom, at home.
Yeah.
You see a poor person, you're riding down the street, you see someone who doesn't have a coat. I mean, there are young kids who really have that intense empathy.
You mentioned somewhere where the Harley School near Rochester, New York, has a program where participants visit hospices. I mean, again, and I remember years ago when they were talking about bringing babies into kindergarten and having children, try and define what the baby might be feeling. It's almost, it seems bizarre that we have to do that, but we do.
It's a really elemental, basic, instinctual program where people are working with babies. I think the program started in Canada, but it is in this country. Analogous is a pet. How is my puppy feeling, my kitten feeling? So animals are a great way to engender, and if I may say, prompts, right? So it's not like the puppy and kitten automatically. If you're a parent, or maybe you have a bunny in a classroom, ask your children, how is the bunny feeling today? Is the bunny thirsty? Does the puppy want to go outside? Prompt questions where you're trying to generate empathy and with curiosity.
Yes.
It's not that hard.
Oh my God, that's like my favorite word, curiosity. So the other thing is increasing playtime. So say a little bit about that, because I think that's, to me, I think school, the way it's designed, is actually quite horrifying in some ways. Little kids sitting behind a desk, and when I was a kid, we had recess in the morning, recess in the afternoon.
Right. We are eliminating playtime, and I think that's another thing that is very concerning. Today, this focus on grades, testing, and a great
Not on being a human being.
Exactly. So a great part of the year is teaching to the test, and teachers also are suffering because
Sure.
they don't get to put their creativity and their curiosity into their curriculum. So again, these are things that we all should be doing to generate empathy using playtime. Why is playtime wonderful other than, physical exercise? I mean, there are many, many research studies for the mind that on the playground, kids are learning to be what they're good at. And I think they have now, there's more inclusive ways if they're adults supervising, but there's a lot of social, emotional skill development that's in free play. And, adult can be coaching here and there, but playtime, a great place to develop social,
absolutely,
emotional skills.
I agree.
And empathy.
Yes. So then the other thing, talk to me about bully sides.
So this is the extreme, the very sad thing. And so Kidsbridge was doing diversity appreciation and social emotional skills. And then sadly, I started reading about more children killing themselves. And we call that bully side today. So I realized that there was a lot Kidsbridge could do. And of course, there's a chapter in my book about how we can better help children. Children as young as 8, it's just a head shaker that a child at 8 would have the wherewithal and lose hope. So this is very serious stuff. One child with empathy and empowerment can save a child's life.
I agree.
The most effective thing is the simplest thing to do. There are children who are bullied or cyberbullied at school, and they go home and they're still bullied or cyberbullied. When we left school at 3:30, that was it, right? So now this bullying, cyberbullying is 24/7, and the kids have no relief. One person can save a child's life. Listen to that child. I noticed that, Sam took your lunch today. How are you feeling? Just call that person. And then the equally important is tell an adult. We are a bystander society.
What about the adults who say, suck it up?
Oh, well, the man up, that doesn't work. And I did have someone, I was speaking at a school, a person came up and said, man up, it made me the person that I am today. And I said, well, that might have worked for you, but some children kill themselves. It doesn't work anymore. It's just an old tirade and philosophy that doesn't work. So I want to encourage parents to talk to their children and listen to them. Sometimes you get a grunt, right, in middle school, that's how it goes. But there's just so much more we can do in terms of coaching, listening, and teaching our children not to be bystanders. We use the word upstanders.
So describe what an upstander can do.
So someone says they're going to bring a gun to school. Someone says they're going to hurt themselves. Be an upstander means safety issue, right? So go tell an adult as soon as possible. Someone feels isolated or alone, feel empathy for that person. Upstander, take some action. Invite that person to a party. Invite that person to a baseball game. An upstander.
See, the thing that, again, it's absolutely that simple, but on the other hand, the upstander is terrified that they will become the victim.
So that's a very, very good point. And here's the rub. Here's the difference. You can tell kids what to do. Right? I call it finger wagging, and that's in my book, Finger Wagging, a waste of time. The children and the students who visit the Kidsbridge Tolerance Center practice what to do. They practice going to an adult. Kids can't even ask a friend for help anymore. We put them in pair shares, and they ask each other to help because they are unpracticed. So it's not enough. The kids know the right thing to do. They have to practice the skill sets that they have, the strategies. There's not one strategy. There's many strategies, and research provides the strategies. Practice so that when they are called a name, when their friend is bullied, when there's a safety issue, they're ready to go. It will happen. So we prepare them for that.
Yeah, that's really great. Do you have any particular success stories that come to mind?
I have a few, there's kids, every year, I get one kid that really resonates, and I have many stories. One story was a middle school girl, I remember, and she said, she just opened up, and I have the kids write epiphanies. She said, 8th grade, I didn't realize other people were being bullied. Now, she knows other people are being bullied, but emotionally, she could finally feel there was not something wrong with her. Millions of kids are bullied. So that was an epiphany for her. And another favorite one I have is a child said, I didn't realize I was a bully. So this child was doing mean things, and then we had the bully. We actually say the child that bullies. We don't call children bullies anymore. So this young man was exhibiting bullying behavior. I didn't realize I was. So now he can leave and decide whether or not to change that behavior, just doing a bunch of mean things. But no, eureka, I found out I was a bully, and I have to consider stopping these behaviors. So I have hundreds of stories.
That was one of the big things I was going to ask you about, is from the point of view of the bully. Now, in my world, a bully is essentially either hasn't learned proper behavior, but usually they're suffering in some way. And they don't know how to deal with it. So, I interviewed someone who wrote The Cure for Hate, and he was a white Aryan supremacist and ran a hotline, a hate hotline. And so the whole idea was that it gave him an identity, a sense of belonging.
Right.
And I said, so why do you have to hate somebody? So in order to feel better about yourself, there has to be somebody beneath you.
I think that's analogous. Bullies, from the research, do not have low self-esteem. They might be copying the behavior they're seeing in the home. Little bullies grow up to be big bullies. So what I say to the kids in the Tolerance Center, when you stop a bully, you're actually helping that person, because they're not getting signals from anywhere else to stop being bullied. Another classroom technique is to redirect. If a child is bullying other children in 3rd grade, have that child mentor children in 1st grade. Like, take that energy.
Have the bully mentor?
Yes,
wow,
have that
that's
bully,
great.
because you take that extra energy, that want for attention, and then throw it into a positive stream. So that's another. There are many different ways and techniques, but we need to correct this younger so that these children don't grow up so dysfunctional.
So how do you create a sense of urgency?
A sense of urgency when we're teaching the children?
No, to just about the whole issue of developing empathy, of getting parents to actually embrace some form of active action.
So I've been trying to write this book for 15 years. I felt the urgency because I looked around and nobody else was saying what I wanted to say. And so my urgency, my message is, parents and teachers, you can make a difference. Racism and diversity and bullying problems start at 3 years old. We need to start younger with our kids. We can do it. Make a commitment to empathy development, 20 in the classroom, at home. And it's urgent because look around. I mean, look at our contentious society today, where we're learning to, hate the other and be in our own tribe.
But here's the whole thing. I call it otherism. So there's my tribe, the people I relate to, and then there's them. And unfortunately, them is not just, oh, there's them. Interesting, different, but interesting.
Right.
There's them, and we don't want any part of them. So, and I think, clearly that is showing up more and more around the world. Us versus them. Belong, don't belong. And all we all want is a sense of belonging. But what happens is we're very unskilled at it, and so then we join organizations like the hate group or whatever, because we now belong to something. And I think for me, what happens, where it goes back to, is children need to build their self-esteem, because a child who has a lot of self-esteem is not going to be so likely to want to exclude and
research says a child who feels good about him or herself or themselves is more likely to act and to be an upstander.
So unfortunately, our time is up, but thank you for having this conversation, and thank you for the work that you're doing and your commitment to developing empathy, because we are starving for it.
Thank you for being interested in this very important topic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My name is Natasha Sherman. Thank you for joining us.
Especially since I was a kid sitting in elementary school, I've always felt like I was kind of the outcast or always just picked on. Sometimes it was someone coming up and saying something mean to me, or sometimes it was just me feeling alone or that I just didn't belong. One of the great things about Kidsbridge is that it doesn't just teach kids, ways to talk about bullying or ways to address bullying, but how to be upstanders in their community. I think kids need to learn how to kind of feel and put their own lives in someone else's shoes. And I think Kidsbridge does an amazing job of kind of walking individually each student through that and showing them not only ways to spot bullying, to spot people feeling down, but to give tools for that kid to also gain the voice to be able to speak up and to help that student.
The STARS program has helped me tremendously. I've matured a lot. Like, I used to have behavior problems.
It helps me because my first day when I met Mr. Green, I didn't want to talk. I was quiet. I didn't want to say nothing. And he encouraged me to talk to him, and speak. He helped me a lot.
I've learned in the Kidsbridge program to be kind, heartful, and to always help people.
For the past 3 or 4 years, my tenure as a principal, I've attended 3 or 4 funerals for students who walk these hallways. I would never imagine, and I'm sorry if I get a little teary-eyed, I would never imagine having to work with children, see them smile, and then the next time I see them in a casket. And what Kidsbridge is teaching them, don't accept that. Don't accept the fact that, because a child is gone, that we move on. We have to have hope in our future, hope in themselves, and just a hope for a better Trenton so that those funerals can be replaced with high school diplomas and college degrees. And
people like that, like Kidsbridge, be able to stand up and talk about these issues and not only just talk about them, but create kids that can create a change.